Ooh, freedom. It's on everyone's lips. You're either thinking about it, you're feeling it, you're in it, you're not experiencing it. It means something to you, but you don't know what it means. Freedom. Yep. Our perception of freedom is being challenged right now. I mean, at some level, freedom, this sense of feeling free in the world, there's layers and levels to it, right? Like trauma, there's big T trauma, there's little t trauma, there's a spectrum of trauma. Our hierarchy of needs. Freedom can be equated to that. We have external freedoms, we have internal freedoms. Have we ever been free? What does freedom mean to you? Yes, there's freedom of speech. There's freedom of mobility, to be able to move from place to place on this earth. If we are stewards of this earth, then do we not have a right to be here and be there and be where we wish, right? As long as we're not doing harm to others. Oof, that opens up conversation as well. What constitutes harm towards others? Some people perceive our mere presence as harm towards others. We have freedom of what we do with our bodies, freedom of where we live, freedom of choice. Where do we wish to work? Where do we wish to play? Who do we wish to spend our time with? Freedom. It is definitely being challenged as a pragmatic practice in the world, a visceral feeling, a sensation, a concept. I would say it's been challenged for a long time. And here in the US, behaviorally, from a collective perspective, we are somewhat being different. Government, big tech, big corporations, big pharma. At some level, we're being different. Big oil and gas. Big oil and gas. I know that doesn't even make sense, but oil and gas. Our big industries, in conjunction with government. Not necessarily in collusion or partnership, just in conjunction with government. There's this parallel expression going on right now, where we're seeing pressure, almost like this oppressive force from the government, particularly in countries like Australia, New Zealand, the UK, USA. There's a little bit of a theme there as well, right? To some extent. Other countries that run a different social system, socio-economic system, such as North Korea or China or even Russia, this may not be a contracted state for them. This, if they would experience that, if the peoples of that country would experience what's happening here, and what's happening here obviously is divided in terms of perception and what we're seeing, right? And how we feel about that. Like some of these mandates that are taking place, that are moving through legislation, and some are and some are not. It's really convoluted. But back to what I was saying. So people that have evolved or grown up or that have lived in different societies wouldn't perceive what is happening here in the US as an example, because this is where I live, as something that is constricted or a removal of our freedoms. But what I really want to speak to today, and I want to make note, I want to acknowledge that we are living in precarious times. We are living in convoluted times, interesting times, with respect to freedom of being in the world. And absolutely, I shouldn't say absolutely. I want to, fuck it, absolutely. Freedom of speech, freedom of what we do with our bodies is paramount. And I'm witnessing at some level our established freedoms, our established ways of being, ways of living, lifestyles, altering, being removed. There is a pressure to change and shift. I don't know completely what that agenda is. I can connect dots. I can look at the global scale. I can look at geopolitics. I can look at history. We all can do that. We can look at science from different vantage points. And that's another controversial thing. What constitutes science? Who is funding the research? Not only who is funding the research, what is the purpose of that science? There is so much media representation of events that are transpiring in the world. confusing, particularly with technology. We don't know if what we are seeing is actually real. Has it physically transpired in that way, with that intention, the way it is being portrayed? But let me come back to freedom. Physical external freedom is important. It is fucking important. The right to choose what we do with our bodies, with our families, in our communities. Again, as long as we're not harming others purposely, deliberately, as long as we're not harming others, we have a right to be mobile, to be free in the world, to explore. And I want to speak to a freedom that we often don't speak to. And that is this freedom. Freedom to be oneself. Let me tell you what fucking real freedom feels like and looks like. It is your ability to be you and not be fearful of how that person may see you or how those people may perceive you. It's to be able to be yourself and not wear masks. Not hide your personality, your character, yourself from the world. Not hide your truth, your opinion, your perspective. To be able to step into who you fucking really are and really want to be, and not be fearful of the potential judgment, criticism, rejection, abandonment of others. That's fucking freedom. In interpersonal relationship, in a social setting, in an in-group, in peer group, that's freedom. To be able to be you and trust in yourself, to have a deep level of self-love and self-worth where you don't need to hide from the world, that's freedom. That's allowance. That's power. To be able to tap into that level of freedom as well. Can we do that? We may struggle to do that in a world that is restricting us, because when we lack freedom, when we do not carry a perception of freedom in our world, in our own lives, we feel constricted, restricted, we retract from the world. Now we are in fear. When we are in fear, the amygdala is active, and the amygdala is hijacking the brain, shutting down, if you like, the prefrontal cortex, or minimizing its activity. We're less creative, we're not thinking laterally, we're not productive, we're not critically thinking, so those faculties begin to shut down. We go into survival mode, sympathetic activated nervous system response. Hormonally, we're in fight or flight, whether it's low level or really acute, where we can feel our physiology changing. It's very evident. Sweaty palms, heart rate is racing, like we're nervous, we're restless, physically restless. But we can be in a low level state of that restricted place coming from fear. Now everything is a threat. Everyone is a threat. Now we have to wear the masks. Not only our personality masks and our social masks, but we have to pretend we're someone we're not. We have to maybe be more agreeable than we'd like to be. We're assessing the situation. Everyone is a threat. Freedom is a very fucking important topic right now for so many reasons. There is an intersection of personal freedom, collective freedoms, technology, big corporations influencing the way we do life, what we're exposed to, environmental degradation, not necessarily only caused by humans, but we are in a very interesting time of life where we have access to so many tools and resources, yet we're still stuck massively in fear. We are reactive as a society and as individuals. Let me come back to this notion of freedom. Again, completely acknowledging our right to be ourselves physically in the world, to have a voice, to not be muted, to not be fucking censored because someone disagrees with us, because someone has a different set of values to us and says, you know what, fuck you, I'm shutting you down. That's real. Not to mention some of the atrocities that are occurring in the world right now, and that is a longer conversation. I want to come back to this notion of freedom within. Self-love, self-worth, a perception of I got me, I believe in who I am, I fucking value me, I've done my internal work, I've done my shadow work. I continue to do my shadow work. I continue to explore the places within my own psyche, my own emotional body, my own spirituality that are fucking uncomfortable. And I will continue to explore that. And I want to be me in the world. I don't want to hide. I don't want to pretend to be someone else. I don't want to adjust and contort myself because someone may not like who I'm being or what I have to say or what my opinion is or what my perspective on this matter is. Or they may just not like my jovial sense of self. When you can get to a place where you cease to contort yourself, where you cease to adjust constantly and wear mask upon mask upon mask, when you get to that place, then you're fucking free. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, he arrived at a place within himself where they could take away everything outside him. They couldn't take away this and they couldn't take away this. And how he felt and how he thought within himself, of himself, and how he chose to show up, how he chose to be, what feelings, sensations, emotions, states he chose to be, and how he chose to see the world. That level of freedom comes from acknowledging self, being connected to self, loving all the parts of self, acknowledging all the parts of self, being at peace with every single aspect of self, including your history, including the bad shit that you've maybe done, the way you've hurt other people and you've hurt yourself. That's just the freedom I wanted to speak to today. And of course I had to mention the other freedoms. But we're living in an interesting time. And it's not about, oh, you've got to choose this side or that side. It's fucking not about that level of division. It's about choosing you. And maybe starting with, how can I be free here? How can I free myself of the pain of the past, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the contracted state that I'm in? And maybe that is a powerful, empowering place to start when it comes to freedoms. Power and blessings to you. May we all be free, and may we stand for freedom in every expression of the term.